The man cuts a woman's clothes with scissors. Layers of fading of complicated clothes and skirts. Unzip the shapewear to reveal radiant skin. Woman standing there awkwardly. Men are mechanical and indifferent. It's their wedding night. But it is also the beginning of Georgiana's dream. Georgiana, 17, is Britain's most beautiful woman. And beautiful women don't always get married. She was chosen by the prestigious Duke of Devonshire to become the Duchess. At this time, Georgiana was full of comprehension and fantasy about love. Naively thought the Duke would marry her because he loved her. But she didn't know that in the eyes of the Duke she was no different from any other woman. He has only one request for Georgiana: to give birth to an heir for her. The Duke took her home, and the people, men, women and children, swarmed all the way. Want to bet on the Duchess's honorable face. The carriage drove into the castle and the people lined up to welcome. Georgiana began life as a Duchess. Originally, she was full of expectations for the Duke, but the other party was indifferent on the wedding night. This made Georgiana feel something was wrong. So I talked to my mother about my troubles. The mother said it would be good to have a child. Georgiana had to go back and play the role of the Duchess. She followed the Duke to various banquets with ease. He quickly became a man of the hour in social situations. Unique dress is leading the fashion trend in London. Georgiana does the Duchess well. On the contrary, the husband of the Duke is becoming more and more incompetent. He will feel bored because of the speech of the congressman at the banquet. So I left the table and left Georgiana alone to deal with it. These are still small issues. But that day she saw a maid come out of the Duke's room. Georgiana had a bad premonition in her heart, and she pushed the door and walked in. Sure enough, I saw the Duke sitting there disheveled. There are 2 glasses of wine by the bed. The Duke faced her without any explanation. Instead, she changed the subject and praised her beautiful clothes. But that was just the beginning, and Georgiana got pregnant. The Duke actually brought his illegitimate daughter directly to her. Euphemism made her practice motherhood in advance. Georgiana touched her belly but could only accept it. Not long after, Georgiana was playing cards. Suddenly I feel pain in my stomach and she is about to give birth. The Duke is happy to celebrate his heir in advance. But when it was learned that Georgiana gave birth to a daughter, I'd rather play with my dog than take a look. This made Georgiana very disappointed and decided to give all her love to her daughter. She breastfeeds her daughter herself and can't help but confides in her mother when she arrives. Say your marriage is different from what you imagined. The mother has only a faint sentence. Have a son and everything will be fine. 6 years later show Georgiana follows Duke to Bath holiday. Sitting beside her and watching 3 girls. During these 6 years Georgiana gave birth to another daughter. Pregnant with 2 boys, but both were stillborn. The trip to Bath was also to give birth to a boy. I heard that the spring water there can be used to conceive a son. Georgiana was welcomed by many people as soon as she came to Bath. At the dance she also met another unfortunate woman, Bess. Although she gave birth to 3 sons, her husband more than blatantly. Don't let her see her child. Perhaps it was the same unhappy marriage that made these 2 women hit it off. Soon became best friends. Georgiana even asked the Duke to let Beth live in the castle with him. But she didn't expect that it would cause trouble, but at this time she didn't know it at all. Immersed in the joy of having good friends, the 2 attended the banquet together. Enjoying opera together is almost inseparable. This woman is the most beautiful woman in England. Men all over England like her. Only her husband treated her indifferently. Marry her just to have a son. On this day, she met Gray, her childhood sweetheart, at the banquet again. Gray is still what she used to be, but she's not like herself anymore. But it's nice to meet again. But when she came home with a face full of surprise, I saw 2 men guarding Beth's door. I heard a heart-pounding sound. Georgiana instantly realizes that the Duke and Beth are together. She doesn't care how many affairs the Duke has had outside all these years. But this time she couldn't take it anymore. She asks why the Duke treats her like this. That's her only friend, why not leave her alone? The Duke watched Georgiana cry for the first time. He stepped up to hug her but was avoided. The Duke sat down and said coldly, I have done my duty as a husband and as a wife, you have not. Georgiana was powerless to refute, but that's not the Duke's excuse for taking her only friend. She asked the Duke to drive Beth away, but the Duke only said it was impossible. Disheartened, Georgiana returned to her parents' home. Mother wants her back to the castle. It's still good to have a son. Unable to swallow this breath, Georgiana returned to the castle. Beth approached her and explained that she was doing it all for the kids. Beth thinks there should be limits even for children. But Beth spat out a sentence, "Not for the child, there is no bottom line." Soon Beth got her wish, and the Duke helped her bring back 3 children. Also teaching boys how to practice guns. That's the kind of fatherly love he's never shown to his daughter. Watching the Duke and his family having a good time and being like an outsider, Georgiana was completely defeated. She came to the lake to relax and saw Gray. Gray sees at a glance her vulnerability and helplessness. Georgiana is lonely at heart. At this moment she needs a man to warm her broken heart. 2 people kissing. Georgiana figured it out. She told the Duke to keep Beth by his side and wished them both heartfelt wishes. She doesn't even have a problem with letting those 3 boys inherit the title. Just wish the Duke would agree to her and Gray. But the Duke was angry. She thinks Georgiana is doing this to make him the laughing stock of the world. A man gets a green hat without a son. After that, in order to teach Georgiana a lesson, she tore up her clothes and forcibly had her. Georgiana cried in despair. That's why her marriage is hopeless. After Georgiana attended social occasions as usual. But there was no brilliance in her eyes. She doesn't even need to maintain the dignity of the Duchess. She got drunk at the dance. Ugly, so full of ugliness that you don't even know your hair is on fire. When the Duke saw that he ordered the fire to be put out, he habitually left, leaving Georgiana sitting alone on the ground. Georgiana is pregnant again, this time with a son at last. The Duke's successor immediately gave Georgiana a fortune according to the right of inheritance. How ironic. But the Duke said he didn't like it either, but he was admired by everyone. He just did what he thought he should do. But the Duke's explanation was meaningless to Georgiana. She has no hope for the Duke. This woman was the most beautiful woman in 18th century England. Admirers everywhere. But her husband doesn't love her and just uses her as a reproductive tool. After Georgiana finally gave birth to a son, as he wished, the Duke immediately rushed to London to celebrate. Then Gray came to visit. Georgiana told him, "You missed too much." Georgiana and Gray meets autobiography at the banquet. Beth sees the friendship between the two. "Tell Georgiana I'll keep it a secret." Georgiana came to Gray's room at night. The two no longer repressed their own 4 asterisk. "It fulfilled the sprouting of the spring heart when I was young." Then Georgiana offered to go to Bath alone for a holiday. Actually, because Gray was there. The two stay together all day like a husband and wife. With love moisturizing, Georgiana also becomes radiant. Dress up beautifully every day. Georgiana opened the door with joy. Waiting, but not his lover, but the Duke and mother. The Duke asked Georgiana to come home with him, though the word was not made clear. But we all know what it means. He had heard rumors of her and Gray in London. He threatens Gray's career and 3 children. But Georgiana was determined not to go back to a boring life. But the Duke took out the copper and kept the letters the children wrote to her. Georgiana can't ignore those letters anymore. She finally compromised for the sake of the child. No matter how beautiful love is, it must give way in front of children. Georgiana has returned to the castle to live a life like a cage. One day when I was eating, I suddenly heard Gray yelling outside. Said to marry Georgiana and didn't care if she gave birth to boys and girls. Georgiana rushed out and Gray asked if she no longer loved him. Georgiana's answer was firm and weak. She couldn't have abandoned her 3 children to be with him. At that moment, Gray understood that they can only separate. Georgiana went back to the table step by step and said she was pregnant and it was Gray's child. The Duke's reaction was surprisingly quiet. The next day, the child she gave birth to when she was sent back to the countryside to raise a womb was immediately sent to the Gray family. Georgiana gave birth to a daughter. As soon as the baby was born, Gray's father came to pick her up. Georgiana reluctantly walks to Gray's father with her daughter who is out of bond. She told him the child's name was Ibomma Gray and the father left without a word. Hearing the cry of the child, Georgiana was about to rush up almost the next second. Beth held her tight and she finally burst into tears. Announced the end of his love. Georgiana is back at the castle. She often stares out the window in a daze. The Duke came. Some of the lung membranes cramped to sit beside her and held her hand. Said, "I hope our future life is peaceful and quiet." Georgiana shook his hand back and released it immediately. On this point, they reached a consensus. After all, some face still needs to be maintained. The Duke went to the window and said it would be nice to be as comfortable as a child. At this time, Georgiana seemed to realize the pain of the Duke. Even though he is rich and powerful, but can never live freely. Georgiana is back in the social circle with the Duke. She's still the queen of society. Even in the face of his former love, Grey, he can deal with it calmly. Grey told her he was getting engaged. He also said that he had a niece Imoza. Later, Georgiana often went to see their daughter. She has also been by the Duke's side. Until she died, Beth became the new Duchess. The Duchess is based on a true story, describing the legendary life of a woman who was under the age of 18 and married into a wealthy family at the behest of her mother. On the surface, Georgiana is a noble lady of beauty and a generation of socialites. Who knows the pain behind her? Maybe life is full of compromise and helplessness.